It's a known fact that ADHD and alcohol abuse are frequently co-occurring disorders. It's not uncommon for someone with ADHD to use alcohol to cope with the challenges, only to find that alcohol is creating the challenges of its own. In this episode, we have 4 guests who have all chosen to stop drinking alcohol and are learning to navigate ADHD symptoms without using substances to numb them. They share the struggles and also the things they've learned to help them strategize and cope with ADHD with confidence.
Welcome to Through the Glass Recovery podcast, where we believe that connection is the opposite of addiction, vulnerability is the antidote to shame, and that recovery isn't just rewarding, but it's also a lot of fun. We're your hosts, Julie and Steve. Listen as we get together with friends to shed light on the hard things, talk about the other side of addiction, and how we create a life so full there's no space left for alcohol.
Just a quick reminder that we host a free sober happy hour every Monday on Zoom. You'll find a whole group of wonderful people who have decided to take control of their lives by removing alcohol. We created this space to give others a chance to connect, learn, and to not feel so alone in sobriety. For more information, come visit our website at throughtheglassrecovery.com.
Hello and welcome to Through the Glass Recovery podcast. So nice to see all of you. We've got a whole bunch of returning guests. We've got some people we've been friends with since the very beginning of our recovery, which is super cool. It's just going to be a great night. So really happy to have you guys all here. I'm going to go ahead and get started on our introductions, and we're going to let Antia go first.
Oh, me. Okay. Hi, I'm Antje. I am 47. I'm married and I have 2 teenage kids. And I am sober since a little bit over 1,000 days. So that's great. I'm really proud of that. And yeah, I think, yeah, and I've been diagnosed with ADHD when I was about 40. So maybe that's important to know too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely helpful. Cool. Well, it's really nice to see you. Really nice to have you back. We haven't had you on the podcast, I think, like this whole season yet. So it's just nice to see your face.
Thanks, Giselle,
Thanks for having me.
too.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, it's great. We love it. All right, next up is Ben.
Ben, I'm 46 years old and live in New Hampshire. I've been sober for, I was 3 years on October 16th. And I was diagnosed with ADD about 2 months before that, maybe 1 month.
All right. That makes it for quite the roller coaster, huh? Cool. Happy to have you. Nice to see you.
It's good to see you again.
All right, next up is Dave.
Hi. Hi. Long no see you guys. So let's see. I'm Dave Davis. I am 60 years old this year. Today is my 600th day.
Ooh, right on.
Celebrate
Right on the 600?
right on the 600 today.
Congratulations.
Thanks. And I'm from DeKalb, Illinois. Originally from Cedar Rapids in Ottumwa, Iowa. Yeah, grew up there, but came out here to go to school and never left. I was diagnosed with ADHD 2 years ago. In 2022, when we first moved out to DeKalb. I was also diagnosed with autism, so I have what's called ADHD. My wife is the same. Our 2 kids, 32 and 29, are the same. And they're my stepsons, but they're very much like me. And then we have 3 dogs, so we're like a ridiculously spicy family. So never a dull moment.
Amazing. Cool. Well, yeah, really, really happy to have you here. I think it was actually the episode that we had you on most recently where we were like, we really need to do an ADHD episode. So I'm really glad you were able to make it back for this one. And
This episode is because of Dave.
yeah, so you're a superstar.
Got the 3 dogs too, Dave.
Cool.
Yeah.
We got 2 senior ones and a 1-year-old baby. He just turned 1 year old.
Aw,
Very cute.
really cool. All right. And last but not least is Miss Amber.
Hey everybody, I'm Amber. I just turned 42 at the end of October, and I'm coming up on 3 years in December. Christmas Eve will be 3 years. So, celebrating all the things out here in Colorado, which is amazing. I have not actually been diagnosed with ADHD. I have not gone to go get diagnosed with ADHD, but I am very without diagnosis, very, very certain of that. And it makes a lot of things in my life make sense. And so, even though it's tough to navigate, at least I have some why as to why I do the things that I do. So,
Definitely.
I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, really happy to have you here. Thanks so much for coming. So for our topic, we have had so many guests over the past couple of years that have mentioned having ADHD and how much that's affected their recovery. And we realized it was an episode that we really needed to have. A dual diagnosis of alcohol use disorder and ADHD throws some unique curveballs into what can already be a really tough issue to navigate. So, what has it been like? What are some challenges you've faced? What have you learned about managing both ADHD and problem drinking? You guys are welcome to jump in and
I'll go.
yeah.
So since I got diagnosed with it back in 2022, I didn't really get into my diagnosis until this year. And I think I was talking about this last time with you. The about 6, 7 months ago, my wife had pointed out to me that I have something else called RSD, that's rejection sensitivity dysphoria. And it just made sense. And so I started researching that, and I'm like, I really need to look at my ADHD diagnosis and see how that's affected me. So I went back and started researching and did a whole bunch of stuff. Found a great book by Calvin Caulfield for men, but he also has a great book for just overall ADHD. And then my wife got one for women that was really good. So I was reading that as well. And everything just made sense finally, from my childhood all the way up until adult to today. I love it. I love that I have this superpower. It explains some of my quirkiness over the years, especially my autism. Finally got into researching that as well. And then in 2023, I decided to get sober for the last time because I had been struggling since 2020 and even with the app since 2021 to get myself there. And I kept relapsing, kept resetting, kept resetting. And when I started to do some study after the 20th of March in 2023, one of the things that I did find out was that it's a comorbidity of ADHD. It's not just a alcohol use disorder thing. It's a ADHD trying to numb our stimming process with our dopamine levels. So once I do that, I can sleep. I could sleep. I could go. I could relax. I was not a angry drunk. I was a mellow, peaceful, happy drunk. And yeah, it was just weird. But when I came off of it finally and started to get more into my ADHD diagnosis, I found that it was interesting that here I had this whole time, and I was just drugging it up and
Right.
taking it off to the side and not doing anything with it. So, I've come to a really good place in my life now with this, and yeah, it's that.
That resonates with me, Dave. This whole upper and downer thing is what I didn't understand for many years. The drinking caffeine from morning to right before you want to go to bed, basically. And then starting to use the wine to actually be able to go to sleep and shut everything down. And every day, I even called it in my mind the uppers and the downers, like the uppers and the downers. And it's definitely a thing for people with ADHD, I think. Especially, and for me, it was self-medicating, right? Self-medicating with the caffeine to function and then trying to somehow function in the evening to be able to go to bed at some point. Yeah. So that resonated, definitely.
Yeah, and then you throw an espresso martini in there, and it's like, You don't know up or down?
I didn't do those things.
Yeah, I mean, I've toyed with getting an actual diagnosis. I still toy with why, right? But for me, I didn't realize that I had any problems. Well, I mean, in general, I didn't think I had any problems, right? And when I quit drinking, there were just these certain thoughts, behaviors, how I felt and was like, "Oh, okay, so this is not like I thought I'd feel better than I did, and in a certain ways I didn't." And I was like, "What's this all about?" Right? And so then I started to that's where like the power of social media, right? Like as I was following sobriety accounts, like in recovery accounts, I was also following a lot of people who were talking about the co-occurrence of ADHD and alcohol use and they would describe things and I was like, "Oh my gosh, like this is my life. This is what I do to a T." And so it was interesting to be able to sort of say, "Okay, that makes sense." And now it's just a matter of how to manage it, really, uh, which is a struggle all on its own.
Yeah. I think for me, the two big things are impulsivity and emotion regulation. And since I got sober, it's becoming so clear to me how I used alcohol to somehow manage emotional dysregulation and kind of figure out a way to cope with the aftermath of my impulsivity. So I will like have impulsively commented or said things to people that then I anxiously regretted that I said it. And that cycle was unbearable. Then to sit with the social anxiety of what did I do, unfiltered, just saying things. I think the biggest benefit of my medication is the filter that I'm getting when I'm on medication, to be honest, and the reduced social anxiety because I don't just blare stuff out that I regret, then 5 minutes later into a spiral of panic mode and catastrophizing what this all could do to me, and then using alcohol to calm down my nerves to and that's right now still my biggest struggle when it happens, to sit with that anxiety because it's compared to a lot of let's say for people with ADHD, that whole pendulum swings so much further out when you're anxious and when you're upset, when you're angry, all this stuff is like on steroids, your emotions. To sit with this when people tell you you got to learn to sit with your emotions when it's on steroids, it's just so hard. And I still don't like all negative emotions. I have a hard time with them. I still struggle to feel them. I wish they would go away. And yeah, it's to me always over and over bringing back to me this why did I drink? That's why I drank because I hated feeling that way. And now I gotta somehow, sit through it. So, mm,
I would agree with almost everything that you just said, except maybe in social settings, I'm a little quieter. But I felt like I was anxious. Like literally every single thing that you just said, I would say I completely agree with. So I was diagnosed. I've got a son. I don't know if I mentioned my kids, but I'm married with 2 children, and I'm officially the dad of a teenager today, which is cool. And he, I guess I never gave ADHD much thought at all, and then he was diagnosed, and then he is like made me believe in it wholeheartedly. He absolutely has it, and he has remarkable strengths. I feel as though I and my wife also has ADHD. I mean, it's like there is a superpower component, which I think is important to talk about. But I was researching and reading a book, and I was like, oh my God, outside of like extreme hyperactivity, I was reading a book about myself, and it hit me between the eyes like so hard that I went to the doctor and just knew, just like you said, Amber, like I went in with 100%. I was like, there's no way that I don't have this, which I did. And then I was given medication. I was trying to research to see how comfortable I was with my kid taking it. I decided to, and it was like, I'll never forget that very first day. And medication has major downs. Like I have this love-hate relationship fully with it. So,
Exactly.
but,
Yeah.
but day one was like, I couldn't believe you could think as clearly as this. And then like I could see my thoughts, and I was in a job that I didn't want. I immediately redid that resume that was so hard to conquer in like an hour, and then found a new job. And within like 3 weeks, 4 weeks, I just looked at my drinking and I was like, what is going on right here? Like, this is stupid. And I've tried to quit. I mean, I just say 100 times, but like legitimately for a decade, I've tried and never really told anybody because I wasn't a sloppy drunk either. And I just think it, yeah, I've told Steve, Julie, and Antia this, but like, of all places, I was just sitting medicated on Vyvanse. I think it's important to talk about what it was. I was given Vyvanse, and I'm sitting getting an oil change and just like saw that I have to do this. I have to quit drinking. And I just went home and told my wife with conviction, and that's been the turning point. So like, I don't want to say that medication component is life changing, but my life changed as soon as I took it.
I was going to ask that question. What medication, if any medication, do you take? How does it affect you? And have you tried stopping it? What is your experience with it? Because I think everybody probably has one when it comes to this. Well, Dave's shaking his head like with no medication. I'm saying has one with or without, right?
Yeah.
So
No, I'm not on any medication for ADHD.
no, okay. So my next question then is because you're not on any medication, what kind of things do you do to help yourself?
Couple of things. One, this is my medication. You know, it's a stimulant just like any other of the stimulants that are out there.
You're holding
can
up a
only-
cup of coffee. Is that right?
I'm holding a cup of peace. Telling our listeners if they forget it, the world can't see this.
All joking aside there though, so like there's a guy, I think it's Ed Halloran, that Driven by Distraction or whatever. And he said none of the actual like medications work for him except coffee. Yep. So if used appropriately, like I think it's a quick giggle, but it's like there's a lot of truth in that too.
No, and that's where I got it from when I started looking into my diagnosis and researching the medicines. I love him. He's got a great podcast. And just thinking about it, I was like, well, yeah, I do. And then I cut it off at a certain time of day, which is usually the time that a lot of people start to come down from their Adderall or their Vyvanse or whatever in the afternoons. And then there's these like guys that are pushing the herbal stuff on, Facebook and other places that uh, they talk about, well, this just kind of enhances it and brings it for. No, I don't need that. I don't need. There's my impulsive side of my ADHD going, oh, should I try this? So that stimulant works for me for focus because I'm a database architect. For my focus for my IT world, I have an app that I use that I love called Brain FM. And I just recently got that about 3 months ago. It was a game changer for me with the focus mode that they have. And it's a mix of isochronic tones along with a little binaural beat, along with some sol
I've tried that too.
Yo.
It does help. I've tried that too with such apps, and it does help. Yeah.
That one, and they also have wind down music now, and they also have great meditation, relaxation stuff. I just absolutely love them. Contacted them to tell them just how much this has really helped me. So, it's
Cool.
been wonderful. It's kept me off of going because I have thought about going on Adderall, and I've thought about Vyvanse, and there's also one that I was talking about with what they called redirection, where they I can't remember the name of this. But anyway, so it's this thing where you're working on something and somebody bugs you and says, "Hey, can you take 5 minutes to call me?" And you just took you off of your focus and put you over here. And 5 minutes later, you're like, "What was I working on? oh my God,
Mhm.
it takes me all day sometimes to get back on it. Brain FM helps me, all that, that kind of stuff helps me out now. But that there is a new drug out there, and I will have to send you guys the link to it because it's a non-stimulant, and there's a lot of people that when they're on it, after the first 2 months, they can drop their stimulant version, and they actually get more out of this than they
Mhm.
did for focusing and for, executive function. And it's a new one that's out. So,
Yeah, there's Qelbree and Strattera that kind of work like this. They're not stimulants. You have to take them. They're kind of like an antidepressant, but have like the nor with some word that I can't think of right now. But my son's doing that because he maxed out all of his doses. There was nothing else he could do, and so they're now doing a combination of a lower stimulant together with something like that, and it works 24 hours. That's the good thing. So when you're driving an evening or so, that you still get the benefit of that medication. Yeah, I'm on Vyvanse. To me, it makes me feel more like an adult. I feel more grown up when I'm on it because I have my filter on and I can inhibit things better. Yeah, I feel more grown up on it. I don't like that it doesn't give me any appetite. I have a really hard time struggling with that, and having a history of an eating disorder is really hard with having then no appetite to motivate yourself to eat. So there is a downside to taking Vyvanse. It works really well for me at work. I'm less exhausted after a day of work because I can focus better and don't feel the overwhelm of like what I would do without medication is procrastinate and get off track so much that then I get overwhelmed with all the stuff that I don't get done and work longer hours, come home more exhausted. And this way I get my stuff done. I'm home. I'm able to, uh, get done what I need to get done in a day, and that's nice. And feeling more like an adult is nice.
it's good.
More age appropriate, say it that way.
So
Mm.
because I just don't know what it feels like, but does the medication also help with the emotional dysregulation? Because it sounds like from what you guys have said, it helps a lot with the focus, but does it help with the emotional stuff? Nice.
I I would say it. I feel like I'm trying to like take. I've had a rocky road. I feel like, which I've talked to, especially I think probably all three that I mentioned, but Steve and Julie for sure. Like it worked unbelievably well for me. Vyvanse just right out of the gates, middle range dosage, and then but it never worked at a. They say like 12 hours. For me, it was like half that for whatever reason. Metabolism or whatever you want to say it is. It was really short. So then I started to think about like I was always trying to think about when I would time it. I would occasionally take it if I had like just killer days. I borderline. I don't want to say abusive because it was a very different feeling in my mind. I didn't feel like I was doing something naughty, but if I had a killer day, I'd take two because they were short. And now I'm short on my dosage. So now I'm thinking about what day should I skip? And it was like this rotational chatter in my head that was close enough to like what I would say I had with alcohol, where I realized, oh my God, my brain can be so much quieter without all of the things I was trying to balance in my life while drinking. So I hated that chatter. And I've been on and off for, I guess, 3 years, except in the last like 6 months, I stopped taking Vyvanse. Right about that time, I shot into like not immediately, or it was a slow decline, but like I'm definitely fighting depression. So I had my first psychiatric evaluation. Now I'm on Wellbutrin.
That's a good one.
I'm
That can
on
help with
Wellbutrin.
stress.
Right now I'm like 3 weeks into that. They say it takes like 1 to 3 weeks. I definitely feel exactly what I went into him and I said I would love to have some fix. Then I feel no buzz. I don't want to look forward to some different feeling. I just want a pill that might help. And so far that's been what I wanted. But
I wanted Wellbutrin because I heard good things about it, that it can help focus and mood. I also have bipolar disorder, so I take something for that anyways. And I think what my doctor explained is that ADHD is on a continuum. You can have it severe or you can have it mild, right? And so Wellbutrin is something that can help to a certain extent. But if you have ADHD full blown, like really bad, then it's just not strong enough to really take those symptoms away. So they advised against me even giving it a shot, which I was kind of disappointed. I was hoping for something like that too. But I have to admit, I don't feel that buzz. Like, I don't feel a buzz or anything. I just take it. I actually had surgery and didn't take it for 2 weeks and liked having an appetite and having joy in eating. And I was thinking, maybe I should try without. And then, yeah, one day of work, and I'm like, nope, not doing this. So I was back on. So, but yeah, so I don't feel that like looking forward to taking it or like having a buzz. I don't get that. I just, yeah, take it and yeah.
No,
For me, like it's definitely, well, there's definitely a feeling. To me, it feels like pretty close to like just an incredibly great, strong cup of coffee. Like that's about how I feel for an extended period of time. But the buzz component for me is like being able to sit down and start and finish a project is like, oh my God. Like it is, it's like, it feels like, oh my, I can't even believe this. Or like I write a lot of songs. I can just sit and like, if I happen to take it on a day off and I have 3 hours, I can like keep my focus through the whole thing. I can start and be like, and stay in that exact same mindset, creative mindset for, oh my God, as 3 or 4 hours straight instead of like 10 minutes here.
So for you, the buzz component is like completing tasks and accomplishing stuff and being
100%.
able to focus. Like the buzz is literally the focus for you. That's like what you're saying. That's how you're talking. That's how you're forming that.
I don't have that like this. I had always the ability to hyper focus even without medication. That's actually people with ADHD don't have trouble focusing as long as what they need to focus on is interesting to them. And when it's interesting to them, then like I was like sometimes on the roll with something at work for weeks and just so hooked. I just ignored everything around it. It was just that I could lose any sense of time over this and I didn't need medication for it. It's the stuff I don't want to do that I can't get done without medication. And so I never really had that issue that when I wanted to do something, when things were fun, I was actually hyper focused. Like I could sustain much longer focus on that than a friend of mine or so who was also working with me on this or so.
And there's the superpower.
Yeah, and it's actually my son, interestingly enough, always complained that when he's on meds that he's not as creative. That he would draw comics when he was like middle school, and he could only do it when he was off meds. The creativity, he says, is suppressed when he's on meds, which I don't. I never felt this, but we saw it in him that he would start drawing when he's off meds, but he wouldn't have any interest in doing it when he was on meds. So everybody, I guess, is affected a little bit different by the medication, but actually being able to focus is only helping me when I don't want to do the stuff that I have to do. Other than that, I could actually function fine if it was just stuff that I enjoy doing, that I'm into, that I'm motivated, and I wouldn't need medication for that. No, I could be just fine. But that's not how life is, right? You gotta get stuff done you don't want to do. And
Right. Yeah, so I'm going to throw this out there really quick. When we talk about addiction to alcohol, most of us have gotten to the point where we actually have like this sense of gratitude for it. Like alcohol, recovery, all of that. Like Ben said, it makes you feel like you have superpowers, right? It's pushed us into a life we would never be living otherwise. And so I think that we have like a sense of gratitude for something that most people would not understand that if they hadn't been there. So what are the superpowers? What are the strengths? Because I know there's strengths that you guys have because of the ADHD. What does that look like? What are the gifts that it has given you? Because I think there's something to be said for at least noticing all of the positives that come from it too.
Yeah. There's what Anja said just a little bit ago. You know, the superpower of creativity. That's a big piece of it. And it does, you know, even when you're stimulating with coffee and such, for some reason I have an issue with my creative side. I get better focus, but I do not have the ideas flowing like I would if I'm sitting down at the piano and just writing, or sitting there with my guitar and just writing. It really affects that part of it for me. The other superpower is our time blindness, like she said. It's where we get focused on something, hyper focused on something we're really enjoying, which I do with data, and I'm looking for issues. I'll look at the clock and 6 hours have gone by and I'm like, "Oh crap, I haven't put together an ad hoc to fix this yet." So I have that part of it as well. And you get that with the creativity as well. You kinda go into it, especially if you're doing, like, art stuff. You get it's something you like doing, you're drawing, you're writing piano pieces, you're doing whatever, and you just lose all track of time. And it's a beautiful thing, but it's also a curse, because then you got other people in your life that go, "Wait, wait, wait. Could you focus on me? Could you help me out with this? Could you do dishes?" Things, just regular day-to-day life stuff that we just don't wanna do because it's not interesting to us.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, my superpower was, like, when I was working in the restaurant industry, I was a superstar. Like, I can rock that industry or any high pressure industry, because if I am under pressure, I have this, like, laser focus, and that's why, like, I always said procrastination was my superpower. I'm realizing it's not as much of a superpower as I thought. But I used to say it because that's how I felt. Like, I would let things go because they weren't interesting to me. And so if I let things go to a point where, like, now I have to get it done and I have a deadline, I would just, like, hyper focus in a short amount of time, ingest a crap load of information, and, like, spit out a paper. Like, I could do that in a short amount of time with lots of caffeine. Um, my struggle comes with, like, the planning out of things. I don't, right? Because we do have, it's more of like a memory recall, and like things that take other people, that are normal for other people, like getting up and brushing your teeth and having your coffee and making your bed and doing, like, that's something I almost have to write a list for myself every day, because it just simple things like that, and I'll forget. Like, I'll get halfway to work and be like, "I didn't even brush my teeth today." Like, and for most people, they would feel gross if they didn't do that, or like it's just something they do. I have to, like, remind myself every day of, like, the basics of living, like what I need to do: eat breakfast, have some coffee. Um, Now I have a whiteboard, so I try to write things on that, but then I forget to look at the whiteboard. So there's that aspect. But I don't know. I definitely struggle with, like, the fatigue of deciding and making decisions. Everything is equally important, right? That's one interesting thing about ADHD, is that there's no hierarchy of importance. And so everything, if I have a list of things that I have to do and now something else is introduced, I can't really decide if that's more important or less important than what I have going on. Everything. And so I will literally just stand there in my head, and that's where that, like, stimming of, like, I literally don't know which direction to go. I literally don't know what choice to make. I don't know which direction to go. I don't know what's important right now: paying, my electric bill or feeding the cat. So, like, they're both equally important, and it can't be in 2 places at once, and so I'll just, like, not do any of it.
So does that with the decision fatigue thing? We talk about decision fatigue even just when it comes to quitting drinking, right? If you have to decide 16 times a day that you're not going to drink, it gets exhausting and eventually you just give up. So do you think that things like that make it harder in the beginning when you decide to quit, where you have to keep that the priority even though you don't really want to? Like, does that play in? Does ADHD make it harder in the early days to
Yeah,
keep fighting that fight?
I do think so. For me, that was the impulsivity thing that, fuck it. The quick impulse, not tonight. We'll do it tomorrow. Like, we'll start over tomorrow. That's, I think, harder when you have impulse control issues, when you start out in the early days, when you're still so vulnerable to just the fuck it. Like, I'm just gonna drink. I'm just gonna drink. It's you explain it away. Here's why. And before you know it, you have a beer in your hand, and it's yeah, yeah.
I forget who it was, but somebody mentioned executive dysfunction, right? And that when I'm hearing you guys talk, that's what it's sounding like. It's sounding like that you have, especially Amber, you when you're talking, you have these two things, and then you just don't do either of them. You can't decide which one is the most important, even though they're both important. So they're both important. So I'm just not going to do either of them, and then carry on with something else completely different and be
Yeah.
perfectly happy about it.
Right.
I think it's also hard for ADHD because planning and managing things is hard. So planning, for example, when you are in the early days, you carefully think ahead and think, okay, we're going to be in this situation. What am I going to do? What am I going to order? What I'm going to, how is my way? And that's hard for me to think ahead and plan this kind of stuff. And so before you know it, you're in a situation where it hits you out of left field and then you don't have a plan in place. So I think that can be a big challenge for early days when those kind of things need to be carefully thought out. Am I going to this party? What am I going to do for drinking? What am I going to say to this person when they're asking me? And it's a weakness I still have to this day that I have things I'm anxious about, so I don't want to think about them. So then I'm not going to plan for what's going to come up. And so then I'm hit in the moment and freeze or yeah, make a really stupid decision because on impulse that doesn't work well, you know?
A
So I
really
think
good point.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
It's a weakness I have definitely to not think ahead. Like I'm scared of conferences. I could think ahead. I'm gonna run into this person and that person, the next person. What kind of questions could you ask? So you don't just I freeze, in the moment I'm really bad with small talk anyways, but am I planning this out a little bit? It's so predictable, actually. Yeah, so predictable. Who am I going to see? Who am I going to have small talk? And I do not want to. This is still something I'm really struggling with. Help myself out by making a little list. You could ask her about her kids. You could ask him about X, Y, and Z just to get the conversation going. I rather freeze in the moment and act like an idiot and then get social anxiety afterwards that everything went so badly for me. I still haven't learned that even though I can totally identify the problem. Yeah, and then we used to drink because of all of this, you know?
Yeah, a good example for me was a couple of years ago. My former boss decided to yell at me in what's wrong with you? And this is before I got my diagnosis. And I had never frozen so quickly in my life. And I was still drinking at the time. And it was in my review. And he yelled at me for 30 minutes straight. And I was just kind of like, he goes, can't you just answer me? No, I'm sorry. I don't know what to say to you. And we ended the conversation. I got a really crappy review and almost went to HR with
Wow.
with the whole background of, hey, this dude's bullying me. I just couldn't answer him. I didn't know how to. I couldn't, we were in the middle of a pandemic. What the heck? You're going to yell at me about not being able to focus as well when I'm at home 24/7 and I don't have a lot of people around me and I'm
Hmm.
trying to look into things for you, but it's not fast enough for you, obviously. So yeah, it was a dichotomy going on. And so when I got the diagnosis, I was like, and then when I started reading about RSD, it was one of those things that just the two things clicked. And I was like, well, no wonder I froze because it was rejection sensitivity on steroids. And here I am going, uh, uh, I, what? But I didn't know how to react to it back then. Now I do.
Mm.
And, we have a,
Still don't. I still don't. And I love that you brought up RSD because a lot of people don't talk about it. That it's literally just like a preformed, it's a you already have in your head what the person's gonna say to you, right? And a lot of that comes from conditioning, right? A lot of that comes from our past and our conditioning, but it's real. It's a real conversation that I have in my head of how this is gonna go. And and I'm already rejected. And so I'm just not even gonna we're just not even gonna talk about it. I'm just
yeah,
not
a
even
great,
gonna
I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Welsh, and Irish guy named Wren. his name
Yeah.
the song Hey Hi Ren. If you
Yep.
listen to a lot of that, because he has ADHD, if you listen to a lot of it, that's that struggle going back and forth in our brains and the rejection sensitivity dysphoria going on in our. So when I first saw that a couple months ago, I was like, oh my God, this is brilliant. This kid's brilliant. But yeah, what you just said, Amber.
It's like body dysmorphia. Like we have such an exaggerated sense of rejection from other people, and so it just makes it terrifying to have any kind of conversation that's even remotely uncomfortable. And but I find
medicated with self-medicated with alcohol.
honestly, well, right. And for me though, like unmedicated, I am finding what's working for me is just working through it. As simple as that sounds, like the more I pay attention to things and sort of write them down and keep track of like how did I react in this situation and like what was I feeling before it, when I don't analyze my behaviors, they just run amok. But when I do actually sit down and piece together how things occurred the way they did, it does help. I don't do it here, but I got in the habit back when I was living back east. I had read an article specifically about time blindness. Be like, I tell people, I'm like, everything takes 20 minutes to me. I have no concept of time. I have no concept of time. Making a crock pot meal takes 20 minutes. Like, sure, I could totally whip together and I would do that. Like I'm gonna get up early and like make myself dinner for the night. And getting up early was like getting up a half an hour earlier than normal. And I would try to do like an hour's worth of prep in a half an hour. And then I'm like, oh crap, I'm late, right? And now I have to like either leave what I'm doing and like try to finish it later or get to work on time. But they do say like to actually put a clock in every single room. And
Like we get two separate reactions. One's like, yeah, they got another one say, yep.
simple clock firms. Alarm, an actual just a wall clock, a standard against the with a pin. And they say that, what happens is because every room you go in, right, you're going to be like looking, you just kind of like look at the clock and it starts to like subconsciously train your brain to relate what you're doing in real time to time, to what time things are. But no, as far as sobriety goes, like I think, knowing how I sort of operated, I think that's why I like made such a strong like force field around myself in the beginning because I knew like if I did these things, like if I went to IOP and I made myself accountable and like to these things, it was like, okay, I'm just going to go. Like that's all I have to focus on is just making it to this meeting, making it to this workshop. And otherwise, yeah, it would have been, I'm still learning how to regulate my emotions 3 years later. So,
You know what's super cool about this type of conversation, because I just kind of pieced together what I felt like in early sobriety. When you first asked that question, I would have no idea what I was going to answer. I'm talking like 5 minutes ago. But now, like, I think the key factor for me was the ability to actually and honestly play it forward. Take the action, play it forward, see it out. And like what we were all just talking about, when you have I guess, the superpower to see all the options, to see like everything that could possibly happen early on. And then, oh my God, like I could get lost in that thought.
right.
Instead of just seeing it like clear as day. All right, here's how to play it forward. Yeah, if I drink, this is gonna happen. You can just get lost in that like jungle of potential emotions.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes any sense.
That talks.
Even the freeze, I feel like even the freeze state, right, was like, okay, none of these options, I don't know if any of these options are good, so I'm just going to stay where I am, right? I'm just going to stay where I am. I'm just going to freeze. Now I'm not drinking, right? I'm not, maybe not doing anything else, but in that moment, it's like, I am where I am. Like, I'm not making any decisions right now.
Yeah, I've been seeing a therapist every week for the first time with regularity. It's been unbelievable, and it sounds like super goofy, but take that to the next level. And it was introduced to me. It's called urge surfing. Is that anything that anybody's?
No.
So, yep, it's like I've never heard it said that way, but to actually have an urge now and to just like hop on board and ride with it. And then it says, like, at first I'm like, this is kind of stupid, but what color is it? Does it have sharp edges or is it soft like a cotton ball? And like all of these little things that sound so silly, by the time you're done with it, it's a couple minutes later. And I forget what the stats are, but like every minute is crucial when you have an urge. You know, if I want to eat ice cream right now, I can't because I'm on a Zoom call. So maybe after that, I'm just going to ride this out and then I won't want to eat ice cream anymore.
They teach that on Noom. I mean, I've been using Noom for the last couple of years. I love that app. But Noom, the weight loss app, that's all they teach is CBT. And that's one of the biggest CBT tools they use is urge surfing.
That's cool.
Yeah, I use it all the time.
So it sounds like, and I think this is true for people that are dealing with any kind of challenge, not just ADHD, but when you take the alcohol away, like alcohol holds you in place, right? You take the alcohol away and suddenly all of these challenges that you guys are talking about and so many other challenges, you are actually forced to grow through them and find ways to either use them or cope with them or learn from them and become stronger, and gain skills and gain knowledge and awareness. Like I think that's the big thing is once you take the numbing away, then you're actually opening up the opportunity for to grow through whatever it is that you're challenged with.
Heal.
And and I think that all it means is like once you know that you have this diagnosis, that as time goes on, there's just these non-negotiables that just bubble up. And it's not like I know right at that moment, but like right now I know with conviction that you have to have the right job. Like if you're going to work, there are jobs that I could not exist in. I've lived in them, and now it makes sense why I've quit 3 or 4 cubicle type jobs so quickly, like 2 weeks in, 6 weeks in. You know, I'm usually at jobs for years, and I couldn't do it. I would implode. So that's just like certain things like that, and you know, I've learned how valuable sleep is.
Yeah, sleep. I explained it to someone. Sleep resets my brain. I wake up every morning with like you can almost imagine it as like a piece of glass that's intact. And every stimulus that comes in, if I don't take medication, puts a crack in the glass. And by the end of the day, I have this scatter, like this glass nut in pieces, in thousand pieces. And that's done. There's usually, I can feel the threshold usually throughout the day when that's broken. And then there's nothing I can do to reset it other than sleep. Like I will then reset this again and have a, um, a solid piece again. But throughout the day, usually late morning, it's scattered, you know? That's how I describe it to people. And then there's nothing I could do to put it back together other than a full night's worth of sleep that resets it. Yeah.
And one thing, like, it's funny for me, I went years and years I just don't sit down. I went years without watching a movie. And that's just who I am. But now over the last couple of years, and really in the last few months, I've been sitting down and watching like full movies with my kids and my wife too, which might sound like it's nothing, but I just never did it. And I wish that you could be in my head because I'm thinking about all of the other things that I could do to be more productive and I think years ago that I would just go crazy, stir crazy, and I would just get up and do something else. Whereas now I can sit there and just say the peace of mind of saying, of course I'm going stir crazy. That's just who I am. It's no big deal. You know, I mean, that might sound like it's small too, but it's so different. So to just like sit there and kind of like giggle at myself, like, oh yeah, of course I'm thinking about the dishes or going to play the guitar. You know,
But I struggle with meditation. That's when I'm struggle with meditation. I'm giving it another shot lately. And the biggest effort for me is to be willing to shut my mind down and not go in 100 directions at once, right? That's always the barrier for me to do meditation. I always feel better afterwards. I do like 3 minutes or so, and it makes me feel better. But to get myself in that seat and to start the app and to start the meditation, that willingness to give up what you described, right? That you want to do this, you want to do that, and you have all these things to do. That's what's holding me back always to enjoy meditation or to want to do it, or it's always a struggle. But I have a 14-day streak, so I can't break my streak now.
I know this is probably built, this whole podcast is probably built to help people, but I think that I've formally quit trying to meditate. So, me and
Uncomfortable.
the closest thing I come to meditating is just walking, I think, or playing the same thing on the guitar over and over and over and trying to get lost in it.
That's a meditation.
It is.
Those are so I can't meditate. I've tried and it's not something that I probably could learn, but it's not something that I've ever cared enough to put that much effort into. But the two things you just said, walking, like out in nature, or playing piano, those are the two things that feel meditative to me.
The problem is emotion regulation. That's why I'm coming back to it. I've been lately dealing so much with being dysregulated, and the only answer to get yourself out of dysregulation is something like deep breathing or as some kind of type of meditation. I wouldn't do it for nothing, other than I'm so desperate to be able to regulate my feelings because it's giving me so much trouble in my life that I'm coming back to this. It's like, fine, we'll try it for a third time. I've tried it twice before and failed, but there is nothing else. When you ask experts, what can I do? They all come back to meditation, mindfulness, and I want to puke every time I hear it. But what can you do if that's the only way this works? I haven't figured it out. I'm 47 and I'm dysregulated about stuff that is ridiculous. And I'm desperate to get out of this. Like, so what do I do? Trying to learn it again. We'll see how it goes this time. Maybe third time is the charm.
That's you're doing the right thing though too, because when we get a tool, sometimes it doesn't work the first few times and then we give up. So, I mean, you're sticking with it and keep giving it a shot, even
14-day streak, even if it's struggling.
Yeah, it made me think hopefully it's one of those, you go to meetings like this and all you see is the differences until all of a sudden, boop, you see all the similarities and it's like, oh, hopefully it's just like that. All you're doing right now is struggle. And one day you're like, whoa, meditation's a breeze.
I don't know if I'm gonna get there.
And also you got the scent, the smell is also, it's like if you like candles or if you like incense or anything like that, you can use that as a form of meditation. As long as it's taking your mind off of everything else and quieting yourself down to just focus on you. That's all you need to do is meditation. There's no set in stone way to meditate. I hate reading stuff where they're like, no, you got to do it this way. No, there's no set in stone.
So there are various ways to do it. That's right.
Yeah. There's a great little free app called 1 Minute Meditation that's really good too. So
early in recovery for me, I read a book called Mindfulness for Alcohol Recovery. And I don't know if you guys have seen it, but that kind of changed the game for me. And again, it's not meditation, but it kind of made me understand what mindfulness looks like, and it directly related it to alcohol cravings and the way we use alcohol to deal with emotion and dysregulation. So just throwing that out there as a potential tool, I guess it was actually a really, really helpful book that focused on little mindfulness tricks. It's not made for the person who's like the guru at mindfulness. It's made for somebody like me who really isn't. And it was really helpful.
So
there's another one called Just Sit.
Hmm.
It's a great book. Got really good humor, but it's a great book.
I think what we're going to do here is also ask you guys after this episode to send us the resources that you've used so we can share those resources with everybody else who is listening to this, because I hear a lot of, I read this and this is what I did here. And so there's lots of stuff that I think it would be great to compile. So if you guys can do that before we release this thing, which is interesting that I'm talking about it while we're recording. But anyways, I'll carry on. I have one more question before I end up wrapping this up. And the question is to you guys, how can other people help you? So if you were to say, like, go back to early on, go back to when you're trying to figure stuff out, if you could tell someone like me who I have a quiet mind. I'm like the opposite. My mind doesn't race, it doesn't run, it rarely goes for when it goes for a trip, it'll go for a real good trip. That's for sure. But it doesn't go on trips like that. Mine is a fairly quiet mind, so there's part of me that's like, fuck, I wish it wasn't that way because but if you can see it from my perspective, I see heads shaking. Like if you could see it from you, we all wish what we don't have, wish for what we don't have, right? So in that case, someone like me who doesn't know what it's like to be in your skin and feel the way you guys are feeling, what is it something that you wished someone could show up for you for, especially early on? You know what I'm saying?
I mean, my accommodations.
What's that?
That's my biggest thing lately is I have certain accommodations I need to work, especially when I'm in the office, which isn't regular anymore, but it's going to be here in the next year. And we're going to a new office, and they've asked us. We have a neurodiversity group at work now through our DEI initiative. That's wonderful, and they asked me to put together a document called "See Me." We have a "See Me" document that says this is who I am, and I did a big thing just recently on ADHD and autism. But the other thing was they asked me, "So how can the people who are neurotypical at work help you?" And I was like, "Well, let me put together a document called Work With Me and tell you my accommodations that I need." Because that's a huge piece for us is just I need to have headphones on when I'm working. And the reason I need headphones on is because I can't get, the whole set shifting thing. I can't get people interrupting me. And just know that if I have my headphones on, it's nothing against you. It's just me needing to focus. That's all. Just to understand me a little bit more. It's just to know my accommodations that I need.
How do you go about communicating that in a good way?
I did it with the document. That was the biggest thing. And they're going to put it up on a portal, which is nice. And the other people were like, "Oh my God, this is great. We should have thought about this a long time ago." Whether people are going to understand and accept it is another thing.
It's always another thing about that, and
Right.
that's why I'm asking this question actually, because it's something that I don't really understand, and if I can ask you and there's other people like me listening, then maybe they can hear something where they can show up with some compassion in another way. So
And I've been a high masking person for the last 58 years of my life and not knowing that I was masking so well to try and hide what I had going on.
Mhm.
So, it's a coming out in a way, but it's unmasking myself so that everybody can see who I truly am instead of me putting some facade up, some imposter that I was.
That was such a good, I mean, exactly when I jumped in right when you started to talk, Dave, and I'm glad that you went first because I was going to say as a someone new to this, which I feel very much that I am, I would only hope that they would, if they're listening to this, take some little nuggets of wisdom to be able to better tell someone what you're about. Just like Dave just said, like in the workplace, you have to, the better you understand yourself, the better you're going to be able to explain to some coworkers or loved ones why it is you do the things that you do. And as a newbie, you haven't accumulated that wisdom firsthand, so you have to steal it from other people, you know? So read, educate yourself, and I feel very lucky because I never really shared anything growing up with anyone, and I've done the complete opposite as Steve and Julie knew right out of the gates. Like everyone at work knows that I don't drink, and it's not just a healthy choice that I need to not drink. I've got most people that I work with know that I see a therapist every Monday at 2. They know a handful of people even at work know that I'm on trying a new medication. So just in case I start having a tick or doing weird stuff, if I'm running around naked, no, it's maybe the meds, you know. So, I mean, I would just hope that, somebody would at least stretch the boundaries on what they're comfortable telling people, because I was only met with acceptance. And that's why I was just like, fuck it, I'll tell everybody.
That's so good that you say that because that was my first thing that I thought was, if people would just be accepting, because I actually hide it, that nobody knows I have ADHD. Only very few know that I don't drink. I worry about stigma. I worry about, she did make that mistake because she has ADHD, like that it's, or ADHD, roll your eyes, that thing's not even real. Like I worry, or why she's functioning so well. She has ADHD, I doubt it. Like she just takes the meds so she can work more, or like I really hide it out of fear that if I'm not being accepted, that this is true and real and a problem for me and I need medication to be just like you, or at least to function just like one without the challenge. So yeah, that's probably my biggest wish, and be flexible because I changed my mind 100,000 times until I finally make a decision. And my husband is a saint that way, that he's flexible that way. When I say in the morning, this doesn't this, by the evening, it's a complete different story because I changed my mind 100,000 times along the way because I can't make decisions easily. Yeah.
I mean, I would just say quick follow up there is that, I don't walk around with a megaphone, but at the same time, like the value of telling one person about needing to be sober was a million more than none. So I can't say that every extra person that you share with is going to multiply by a million, but it exponentially, everybody, I think I would just ask everybody to stretch the boundaries the best that you can. And that on day one, it's telling one person, you know,
Mhm.
power in numbers.
Yeah. There's a lot of times, even when I'm sharing my own experience, I hear a lot of me too. And I get more me too, or more I know someone, than I get negative feedback. I've had it's been rare for the most part that I've gotten negative feedback when I normally, like you were talking about, Ben, even a couple of people. Generally speaking, then it gives me a place to go when I feel uncomfortable. That's always been the bonus for me. Amber, do you got anything to finish it off?
No, I was just kind of agreeing with, like, if there's one thing I could say, it is to understand that, it is a disorder. Like, it is not something, it's not a way that I choose to be. Just like I didn't choose to be an alcoholic, right? And that it can be debilitating. And so, especially when you have both at the same time, and you're trying to be sober and you're trying to manage attention deficit disorder, hyperactivity, or ADHD, like it's a disorder and can be debilitating, right? Can literally keep people from living their lives. And so just compassion, and if you have questions, ask, because I know for me, I am an open book always, right? And that's why I'm loud about everything. I'll laugh and be like, "Oh, thanks ADHD for not doing that thing." Because someone else might be like, "Oh, do you have ADHD, or do you think you do?" And I can have a conversation with them about it, just like sobriety. It's just, yeah, just talking about it and sharing it so that other people can maybe understand it a little bit better. It's not just an inability to sit still in school. It's something that can actually, that actually, yeah, that can be hard. So,
Well, I want to say I really appreciate the four of you coming here and sharing your experiences. For me, on the outside looking in, I thought it was really, I feel like I got stuck in a really special place because it's not something I got to experience in my life. But I mean, I sent Julie a message partway through this, and I thought, this is really cool to listen to you four speak about your experiences, and I could just watch you all relate to each other. And I mean, we do this in recovery at meetings and things anyways, but it was really cool to sit on the outside and be a part of your conversation and be allowed into that life that you guys live. So the one takeaway, two takeaways that I took among a lot of the other ones was when you quit drinking, it took the veil off of things and you're faced with okay, now how do I deal with this? And among all of the things that you've learned, the other thing that you all have in common is the self-awareness of how your mind works, how you communicate it, and what you're going to do about it. And that self-awareness piece is absolutely been key for all four of you. So I want to say thank you very much for sharing that self-awareness with us.
Yeah.
So thank you, Ben. Thank you, Amber. Thank you, Dave. And thank you, Antya. I really appreciate you guys showing up and sharing your experiences. This was absolutely great. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Good time.
Thanks for joining us today. If you haven't subscribed to our podcast yet, make sure you do. That way you'll get notified every time we release a new episode, including next week's episode about one of the most important tools in sobriety, boundaries. We'll see you then.